I am so happy to introduce Mackenzie Johnson to you guys. She works at, we're going to call it now OIDD, OIDD. That's our new agency name for you guys who may not know, Office of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. But I am introducing you to Mackenzie Johnson. I'm going to let her tell you her title because I cannot remember it right this minute. But she is passionate about person-centered thinking. She was a part of the Train the Trainer um, course through intellectability. She is, like I said, passionate about what she does, and I am so glad that you guys are here to hear her talk about person-centered thinking. And just really, it's probably what you're already doing, but it's always so good, right, to hear it again and bring us back to the reasons for why we do what we do. So, Mackenzie, thank you so much for being here and presenting. Please tell us your title. I'm terrible with titles.
You're fine. Good afternoon. I'm just a program manager. It's easy to remember that one.
Oh, stop.
Let's
Well,
get
let's tell them what you do then at
yes.
OID.
Okay. So I've been at OIDD for about 3.5 years now as a program manager. I oversee the waiver case management specialists that work different projects around waiver enrollment and case management follow-up. One of them also does person-centered description quality assurance. So they do various different things. And then I also oversee our complex care coordinators that if you're in residential, you have probably seen referrals and such from some of them. So we work some of the more challenging cases in our system, people that end up in hospitals with no discharge options, people and with DSS and CPS and APS, people that are incarcerated. So we do a lot of work to try and help stabilize those people either by putting supports in the community for them or identifying DDS and residential placements. Prior to,
Great.
thanks.
Nope,
Prior to
keep
being
going.
at OIDD, I worked for a contracted case management provider. I started out in early intervention and then transitioned to case management and did that for several years. Like Becky said, I'm super passionate about person-centered thinking. I think Becky thought the same thing when we first went through the training, that we thought we were very person-centered, and then we were like, oh, maybe we need to do a little bit more work around that. So really, person-centered thinking is just how we think about people that we support and how we help give them voice. So I'll kind of talk a little bit through that and then some of the tools that we can use to support people in a person-centered way. Like Becky said, a lot of this providers are already doing and do really well. This is just a little bit of a refresh. OIDD is still offering the 3-day virtual person-centered thinking training with intellectability. I think they do give first priority to case managers because they have to do that, but if there's available slots, they do open it up to residential and day staff. So if you haven't had someone at your agency go through that training, I highly recommend that as well. So if you want to register for someone, I don't know if you guys have business tools or not, but we can get you the Google form. If not, if you go to business tools, it's right there at the bottom where it says register for person-centered training. So,
Yeah,
all right. So we will kind of just jump in
thank
again.
you.
You're welcome. This
Oh,
is
let me
super,
just say
go
this
ahead.
before we go, Mackenzie, real quick.
Yeah.
Um, so you guys I'll give you the PowerPoint after Mackenzie's done, and we will also give you a few of these person-centered tools. Obviously they're not mandatory, but they're such good things. If you've got staff that maybe need a direction to go in, I would highly suggest, giving them a piece of paper, and the tool will kind of guide them through some conversations. So I know Mackenzie's going to talk about that, but you'll get all these resources. I will send them out to you after. It may be tomorrow, but I'll send them out after this presentation, so you'll have everything. Because our intent here is to give you guys the resources so that you can keep training. We're happy to help out. We're always open to ideas on what you need, and also we want to give you everything that we can so that you can use it at your convenience as well, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So I'll let Mackenzie get started.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
So this is, kind of an informal training. So please, if you have questions, Becky is monitoring the chat. You can put them in there, or you can unmute yourself and just ask the question. That is fine either way. So we're just going to start with kind of what the discussion topics are. So we're going to talk about how we've kind of supported people historically with disabilities, and then what that medical model looked like versus what a more person-centered model looks like, how you can use these tools to give voice to the people that you support. We're going to look at the person-centered core concept, which looks at important to and important for. And then we'll go through a couple of different tools that might be super useful to you, which are like Scented Myers, Good Day, Bad Day, Rituals and Routines, and then also a one-page description. All right, so just a history of how we have historically supported people with disabilities. Prior to 1981, people that needed long-term supports and services could only access those in an institutional setting. So that is either a nursing home, one of the regional centers, or an ICF. So in October of 1981, the Social Security Act was amended to allow people to access supports and services in the community by creating home and community-based waivers. So as you know, it takes a long time to get anything accomplished. So it took about 10 years for South Carolina to get their home and community-based waiver programs approved, and then get those implemented and started. So I like people to know that, just so you're aware that historically we have supported people with disabilities in an institutional setting. And so some people still have somewhat of an institutional mindset, and we're trying to move more away from that, to allow people to live more meaningful lives and give them a little bit more choice and be a little more person-centered. So the institutional, supporting people in an institution really follows more of a medical model of support, where we're primarily focusing on their health and safety and treatment of disease. So people receiving care in these settings typically take a very passive role in this model. They don't have a lot of voice in how they want to live their lives, whether that be how they want to live their life regarding health, or even how they want to live a more meaningful life and receive additional supports and services. So in a person-centered model, people are empowered to participate as active partners in discussion and decisions about their care. In residential, we've moved more to having people more involved and participating in their individualized support plans. So in this model, we're focusing on supporting and communicating with people, emphasizing their strengths, capabilities, and opportunities to reach their goals. We're helping to identify things that are important to them beyond their health and safety. So that could be education, community inclusion, employment, people that they want in their life. So we're giving them more of a voice to say things that they would like to participate in. And I know that this can be challenging with people that may not communicate verbally, but even if they don't have words to communicate, they're always communicating in some way, whether that be body language, behavior, with, some people, if they have a preference, light up whenever they hear a certain type of music or see a certain show or a certain person walks into the room. So we'll kind of talk about that a little bit more as we walk through these tools and strategies. All right, so this is kind of how we're going to move from a more institutional model of supporting people into a community model. So when people just have a service life, only what is important for them is addressed. So that's more around health and safety. And we'll talk about the differences between important to and important for in a minute. And there's really no organized effort to address what is important to the person. Then they can move more into a good paid life. And this is a spectrum, right? So people fall at any point on this trajectory. So we just want to kind of move people along the path as much as they're able and capable. But in a good paid life, both to what's important to the person and what's important for the person are present. The closest people in their life are still paid or family members. So we want people to have, deeper connections with people in the community that aren't just paid to be there or, feel obligated because they're family. And so that's really what they're getting in a more community life. What's important to them and what's important for them are present. They have an active circle of support and they are included in community life. So this could be anywhere from, a church family to they might be involved with Special Olympics. It could be a myriad of things depending on what the person is interested in, what resources they have, and how much they're able to participate. So again, this is just kind of an open spectrum that people might fall anywhere, and it might change. They might, be able to be living a more community life, and then something happens, and then they might shift more to a good paid life. So they can go in either direction. All right, so what is person-centered thinking? A lot of people think that person-centered thinking is just listening to what the person says and telling them that they can have everything that they want. And that's really not what person-centered thinking is. What it is it's where guides respectful listening, which leads to action, resulting in people who, so this is just have positive control over their life, and they are able to say what they desire and what they find satisfying, are recognized and valued for their contributions, and then are supported in a web of relationships, both natural and paid. So we just want to make sure that people being supported have a voice and are most often communicating preferences as they're capable. So remember that behavior is communication. So just because I can't tell you, like if you're in my space that I need you to get out of my space, they might lash out at you. That is still some form of communication. So we really, for those people that don't communicate verbally, we just have to pay closer attention. But if you speak with their family or people that are really close to them, even direct support staff that are with them on a consistent basis, they can tell you what they prefer. Or if you do this, this is how they're going to react. So that is how they are communicating with you. So how do we start to implement person-centered practices? So when you start thinking about doing this, what you are doing is giving a promise to learn. So we're going to listen to what is being said and what the person means by what's being said. So we want to, dive a little bit deeper. I know, like one example of that is somebody might tell you that they want to be a doctor. Well, that person might not be capable of being a doctor, but if we start asking some questions about why do you want to be a doctor? For a lot of people that we support, they've spent a lot of time in hospitals. So it could be that they just want to wear a white coat, or they want to, doctors wear ID badges. Maybe they just want to have an ID badge. So what is the reason behind what they're requesting? And then we just want to keep listening and asking questions. It's also a promise to act on what we hear. So we always want to find something that we can do today or tomorrow to keep acting on what we hear. So, we might work with a lot of people that say, oh, I want to do a specific job, but they haven't yet learned those soft skills to be able to be a good employee. So there might be a spectrum of things that they have to go through, or they might want a very particular job, but they have no job skills. So we say, well, we might need to start with this job so that we can work our way up to that. So it's kind of creating what their trajectory might be to meet that goal. And then it's a promise to be honest. So letting them know if what they're requesting will take us time, if we don't know what they're, if we're able to help them get what they're requesting. And then also we're always trying to balance what's important to the person with what's important for the person. So sometimes people might want to do things that are going to be detrimental to their health and safety. And so we want to be honest about that too and say, I don't know how I can support you in what you're requesting because there's no way to balance that being safe for you. So you're just being honest with the person to try and communicate that information to the ability that they're able to understand. So the core concept for person-centered thinking is to try and balance what's important to the person with what's important for them. It's not telling them that they can have everything that they ever wanted, but trying to find some compromise and to ask more questions into why something is important to them. Important to and important for have to influence each other, even us as people. If what is important for us, if that doesn't hold some meaning, what's important to us, then we're typically not going to follow through. So for typical people, one of the biggest examples of that is even our health. So we understand that it's important for us to eat healthy and to exercise. But if it doesn't tie into something that's important to us, like if you're a parent and you have children and you want to be here as long as you can for your children, or maybe you have, you're getting close to having diabetes or something like that. And so it's going to have to tie into something that's important to us for us to follow through on action for things that are important for us. So they're always going to influence each other. So no one's going to do anything willingly that's important for them unless it's a piece of something that's important to them. So that's why it's really important to identify not just what is important to someone, but why, so that we can try and help make those connections to them so that they will be more invested into doing the things that are important for them. So this is just a walkthrough to discuss the differences between what's important to someone and what's important for someone. So important to us, and this is for everyone, that we want to feel content and satisfied, comforted and happy. So that has to do with people that we have relationships with, things that we do, places that we go, certain rituals and routines that we have, rhythm or pace of life. Some people like to be go, go, go all the time. Some people need extra time to process, status and control, and things that we like to have. These are things that matter most to the person. It's not just what the person says, but what their actions and their words say as well. So I can say all day long that eating healthy is important to me, but if I don't ever eat healthy, then my actions are not saying that that is actually something that is important to me. So it's going to be communicated with not just what we're saying, but also with our actions. And then important for, and I know as residential providers, we have to make sure that people are healthy and safe. And I'm not saying that that is not something that we do. We're just trying to create a balance to also include things that are important to someone. So important for includes issues of health, so trying to prevent illness, treating illnesses, or promotion of wellness, so that's diet and exercise. Issues of safety, so we have to keep people safe, right? So that would include their environment, their well-being, both physical and emotional, and being free from fear. And then it's also important for someone to feel valued and a contributing member of their community. I know Becky talks a lot about employment and how employment is not just about a paycheck, but it's about feeling like you have a purpose and, being a part of their community. So that not only is important to most people, but it's also important for them to create like they have, to make them feel like they're meaningful. So I looked at, a couple of the individual support plans and things that are asked. So you can use person-centered tools that we're going to discuss to include in your individual support plan. So one of the questions that I asked on the individual support plan is what people admire about me. So when we talk about likes and admires, that can help meet that criteria on the support plan. It also asks what is important to me and how to best support me. So those are really big components of the one-page description that we'll talk through. It can help you develop meaningful programs. I've seen goals for people that are not meaningful. And we wonder why they have the same goals year after year after year because they're not practical or meaningful. So just making sure that we're giving people goals and programs that are meaningful to things that are important to them. And then also looking at recreation, leisure, and community integration. I know there are some residential providers that do a really, really great job at this and making sure people are as connected to the community as they can be. All right, so most people, even typical people, when you ask them what's most important to them, A lot of people will just say family or world peace or a house or to not have any financial problems. But it doesn't really give us a clear understanding about how to support them. So there are different tools that we can use. If you've done the person-centered thinking training, they go through a lot more than this. I just picked out the ones that I thought would be most appropriate for this particular training. But there's lots of other tools that you could use as well. So before I go into the tools, I'm going to pause and take a break and see if anybody has any questions or anything that they would like to add. Yeah, and I think just, we have a lot of people that one of their, goals is to live more independently. And so I think that I have seen some providers use this to people that are currently being supported in a community training home, really work to listen to what the person wants and help them create some better skills to be able to move to a less restrictive environment, like an SLP2. Um,
Yes. Mhm.
so I have seen that. I think even with employment, I know it's different from residential, but looking at moving people through service delivery, right? Like if someone wants to work, career prep is a great first step, but we should be looking if someone shouldn't necessarily be in career prep for 20 years, if they've been gaining skills and, voice wanting to work somewhere outside of the day program. One of the biggest eye-opening things for me personally when looking at person-centered is I really got into this work thinking I was going to be a voice for those people that didn't have one. And after doing this work, I recognized that people have a voice. My job is to make sure their voice is heard. So that was kind of the biggest light bulb
Ah,
moment for me going through the training.
right.
All right, so now we're just going to walk through some of the different tools. So Likes and Admires is a tool where you can gain information about what other people like and admire about them, not what the person likes and admires. So this can be a really great tool to start off any meeting where there's a bunch of people together that support the person. It not only helps create a positive tone, but if the person is participating in the meeting, it makes them feel like they have some value and have a meaningful contribution. So at your residential plan meeting, this is something good to start out with. Just go around the table and say, I want each person to say something that they like and admire about Johnny. And then that gives you an opportunity to realize, I think that again, person-centered for me was a way to change the conversation with families. I came from early intervention and ABA, and I think that we train families from a very young age of all the things that their loved one is not ever going to be able to do and the things that they're not capable of. So it's really easy to go into the negative and tell you just everything that you're concerned about when this can kind of set a different tone for that meeting and really look at the person in a more positive light. Same thing at a day program, annual meeting. A lot of residential providers do like a call team meeting if they need to get together and discuss the person. I feel like a lot of call team meetings happen when something might not be going the way that we want it to. So this might be a really good tool to start out that meeting because I know some people enter those meetings with grievances already. And then also for a residential screening, um, it's helpful to kind of start those off on a positive note, and the person might be more willing to participate in the screening if someone starts off talking about them positively. And then you can include this information in what people admire about me section of that individual support plan that you're completing annually for someone. And you don't have, I mean, there is like a paper that says likes and admires at the top, but you could just use whatever paper you have. You could even, if you're typing up your individual support plan at the same time, just be taking notes as people are voicing what they like and admire about the person supported. All right, and then rituals and routines I find is one of the best ways to try and determine what's important to someone. We all, as people, have rituals and routines. It makes us feel safe. It gives us comfort and control. It helps with consistency. So we have rituals and routines around everything. Our morning routine, how we end our day and go to sleep, how we celebrate holidays, how we do certain things. And so knowing how people have certain routines will allow us to draw out things that are important to them. It also helps us to know what to expect and will inform others of how we may act. Understanding and supporting rituals is a critical skill in learning how to listen to people we support. So going back to my time as a case manager, there are things that we have to know in the assessment as far as activities of daily living and personal care. So I would ask some very general yes or no questions because I didn't know any better as a baby case manager. And then going through this, now I will ask somebody, tell me your bath time routine. Walk me through eating a meal. Um, what's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? Because that's going to give you a lot more insight into what they're actually doing versus asking, do you have to bathe the person? They're just going to say yes or no and typically not give you any additional detail. But even as residential providers, it's helpful to know, particularly if you are looking to introduce a new person into a CTH2, if the person that you're looking at is not used to waking up until 10 o'clock in the morning and everyone else wakes up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and that person comes and joins your program and throws a fit every morning at 6 o'clock when everybody's up and they're waking them up, that might give you an indication of what, to look at what their morning routine was prior to coming to the program, or starting to ask questions around what people's routines are to see if they would be a good fit to add to a particular house. So the steps for using rituals and routines is that you want to start with a specific situation. So you want to be as specific as possible. So looking at your morning routine, one that I was looking at recently was coming to work. So from the time you get to work to the time you leave work, not necessarily a ritual and routine, but you want it to be around a specific task or job, maybe a specific time of day. You want details connected with people that offer assistance. So if the person isn't able to communicate their full routine, making sure that you're using a reliable source that does that routine with them daily. It could be around the food that they eat, products they use to get ready or be successful. So you might be working with someone and they always use a particular type of toothpaste, and maybe that toothpaste is not there and you've bought them another toothpaste and then they end up getting upset about it but can't communicate that. Even looking at the products that we use is part of the rituals and routines that we have. This skill can help discover what's important to the person, as well as outlining opportunities for negotiation, right? So we, if we know that the person that we are admitting into the program normally doesn't wake up until 10 and everyone else wakes up at 6, then how can we negotiate and change their routine? We're probably not going to go immediately to waking them up at 6, but maybe we can start by waking them up at 9 and then slowly moving towards that. So it's easier to change someone's routine gradually than all of a sudden uprooting them and changing it in one go. And then the skills will bring forward easily shareable and organized information that help supporters make better days for the people that we support. So if they're, if you have a new staff member coming in, but you have that person's morning, in the bathroom, you have everybody's morning ritual written down and on the wall, then a new direct support staff can look at that and say, oh, well, here's their different rituals. So if we stray from that, this is what, they might not appreciate that or end up having a behavior. All right, any questions around likes and admires or rituals and routines? I feel like those are two of the easier ones to use. Oh, I see somebody with a hand up. You can go ahead and unmute and talk and ask your question if you like. Good day, bad day. So this one really ties into rituals and routines nicely because oftentimes if we're having a typical day and those, normal rituals and routines are being met, then everything's fine. Well, then there are instances where there might be something that could happen to make our day better, or other things that could happen to make our day worse. So we all experience this as people. So it's looking at how we learn to best support a person based on what needs to be present or absent in their life. So we can also use the skill to examine what a typical day looks like for the person to establish their baseline. So I actually encourage some of my staff that are doing residential referrals that it might be good to kind of share whenever they send referrals the outline of a person's day, because if we know that if their day is super different than the other residents, that's going to be a tougher transition than if they're already have somewhat of a similar day. So you want to pick a specific day of the week or a specific situation. So like I gave earlier, one of the prompts for a training I'm doing later this week is, all right, we're going to look at a typical day is going to be from the time you arrive at work to the time that you leave work. And so what are things that can happen during that day that could be better or worse? So you just want to make it as specific as possible. And then you're going to ask some questions to look at what their day typically looks like. So if you're looking at this for someone who doesn't communicate verbally, you're going to be relying a lot of times on their primary caregivers and what their typical day looks like. Obviously, a bad day is whenever their behaviors might increase. A good day would be whenever they seem to be in a better mood, their eyes light up more, things like that. So it could be anything from the time they wake up. We can look at specific meal times, the time you go to bed, or any normal activities. So what that looks like. Sorry, there's people leaving around me. And then we want to know what are things that could make that person's day better. So for an example for me is when I'm at work and I get to see Becky, because we don't see each other every day, that might make my day a little bit better. So it could be getting to see a particular person. It could be a specific activity. So they're obviously, even at work, I have preferred tasks. So do I get to those preferred tasks like training or, getting to communicate with certain people.
Oh.
So, we all have things that make our day better, even driving into work. If you don't catch any traffic or you have a particular song come on the radio that you like, that could make your day a little bit better. So where are there points in people's day that we support that could potentially make their day a little bit better? And then there could also be a lot of things that make our day worse. If I come in and I'm immediately met with some, challenging situation and I don't have time to settle in. Also a big thing for me is I like to feel prepared in what I'm doing. So if I get thrown into a situation that I don't feel prepared for, that doesn't make me feel in control, then that can make my day worse. So any change in routine, not getting to complete a particular task. I know sometimes if you come in and you got 10 things on your to-do list and you don't get to any of them, that could make your day a little bit worse. Experience increased traffic, running behind, anything like that could make someone's day worse. So, taking time to step back and say, oh, am I doing things to make this situation worse, or this person have a bad day, and how can we maybe turn that around? So again, you guys probably already do a lot of this by naturally supporting someone, but if there's a lot of staff turnover, the new staff member might come in and unintentionally make someone's day worse and not even know it because of a certain situation. So it's just a way to have it organized so that other people can access the information. All right, and then one-page descriptions. So this is the last tool that we're going to go through. What a one-page description does is it creates a positive introduction of the person being supported. They're used for a specific purpose. So like for a residential program, each person that you support could have a one-page description hanging up in their room that says things that other people like and admire about them, what's most important to them, how to best support them. So we'll walk through those different components. All of my staff members create them for residential referrals that they're sending out. You could have it in their file for new staff. You could have information in there to provide to a doctor to provide an update at a medical appointment. They could be used to help find a job. So we just want to make sure that we're utilizing them for a specific purpose, because depending on what we're using it for, we might include different things. And so we'll walk through what that looks like. They're concise, organized, and use common language so that everyone can understand it. So these are different components. Depending on what you're using it for, you might include some of these, might not include others. So you can have a bit of information about the person, things that they like and admire, or things that people like and admire about them, some little fun facts, what's important to them, what's important for them, what are some of their strengths and challenges, and how best to support the person. So this is actually one of the one-page descriptions that was completed for someone that we were sending referrals on. This is a young man who ended up in the hospital with nowhere to discharge. His dad had passed away, and his mom was struggling with supporting him, with him adjusting to that loss. So it has his diagnosis, his current situation, allergies, medications are listed down below, the contact information, so who their primary contact should be. And then it just talks about things that he struggles with. So transition, unstructured settings, being bored, but then also what he's good at. So he was good at telling you what you need, being patient, using technology, things important to him. So feeling included, being given attention, feeling important to you, sorry, and then having a close network of peers. But important for him was explaining to him why something was unsafe. Is also important for him to feel secure and safe, providing him with activities so that he doesn't get bored. And then it just explains a little bit more about him as well. So this is, it's not to say that you don't include things that people might have challenges with, but if you do, you would include things on how to support them. So we know that a lot of people that we support have challenges, but they have been able to be successful in certain situations. So what has transpired to help make them successful? Here's another example of one that you might put in somebody's room. So it has her picture, and then what they like and admire, what people like and admire about her is that she's kind, a good listener, always wanting to help, has great manners. Some fun facts: she likes jigsaw puzzles, likes to make crocheted bracelets. She has 3 dogs at home and likes country and gospel music. Important to her, so she has a really close relationship with her sister. So spending time with her sister and maintaining her nighttime routine. And then important for is to feel safe and supported. Challenges, so her strengths is she's a great helper, but it's sometimes difficult for her to express how she's feeling. She has a hard time understanding nonverbal communication. And so how to best support me. So you'll see people come back to this all the time, like having a routine. She's sensitive to light and sound. So having headphones and sunglasses available help her out a lot. But putting this up in somebody's room not only gives them more ownership of their room. I mean, if anybody new comes to see them, they can say, look at, what's on my wall. As much as they're able, they can help you create these one-page descriptions. And then here's another example for employment and finding a job. So what people like and admire: this person is friendly, very helpful. They want to work in a restaurant where they can learn to make and keep the restaurant clean. They're good at using a microwave, sweeping the floor, challenges with cooking on the stovetop, and squeezing out a mop. So this just kind of walks through more employment specific information. So most common errors with the one-page description is there's no clear purpose. So it's just kind of a hodgepodge of information that doesn't seem to have a direction. Information might be shared in the wrong place. So instead of putting, say, you put on there, it's important to the person to manage what they eat due to diabetes. That might be important to that person, and if it is, great, but it might also be more appropriate to put under important for. And then it's not in common language. It uses a lot of systems jargon that other people don't understand. So using person-centered thinking skills can help create a more meaningful conversation with the people we support and their support system. It can help guide what is most important for the person and how to best support them, and then allows the person supported to have more positive control over their life.